growing up, junior high and high school, was the same coach. He just kind of like moved up with me. He was my basketball coach. And this coach had a very, very short fuse. Like if you got on his bad side, dude, stuff was gonna go down. So let me tell you a couple stories. One story is this. We're losing at halftime. It's one of those chalkboards. It's not on a wall, but have you ever seen them? They have wheels on them and they kind of came up and you can spin them around so you have two sides to it. All right, well, it's halftime. We're playing really bad. We're losing. Coach is already furious. He comes in. He's like, guys, I'm telling you. He would always use these like country phrases like cotton pick and dag nabbit and like all these weird country phrases like cotton pick, dag nabbit, boys. I'm telling you, you got to run this play. And he's drawn up on the chalkboard, and the whole time his voice is getting louder, and he's getting more upset, and he's getting more upset. And finally he goes, I don't even know why I'm drawing these plays. You don't run it. God picking one of them. Boom! Shatters the board in half. My coach was about 6'3", 270 pounds. Shatters the board in half. Of course, we're all sitting there like this. Scared out of our minds. Then, my junior year in high school, we were playing at the North Mesquite basketball tournament. Can I tell a story? So I went to a private school, and we were a much smaller private school. We were a 4A private school. North Mesquite's 5A. You roughly have about 6,000 more students than we do. And so we were playing at North Mesquite. North Mesquite knew they were going to beat us, and they knew that they were going to schedule the private school kids first because we were going to catch a beat down. Well, that year, North Mesquite, they have not had a team that good since this team. They started a guy that was 6'11", a guy that was 6'10", and a guy that was 6'8". Our tallest guy was 6'3". So we were going to lose, is what I'm trying to say. All three of those big guys didn't win Division I college. And so we're playing, we're getting dominated, it's bad. We're down by like 25 points at halftime. We go into the locker room, and you guys got to visualize this. I don't know if the locker room's the same now, but in the visitor locker room, there are two benches that run along like this. The chalkboard is here, and so our coach is standing right here, and he's just chewing us out. And listen, everybody has that one person in class, or that one person on the team that doesn't know when it's time to shut up. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, everybody else knows, keep your mouth shut right now. And then there's that one guy that just has to say that one more thing. But coach, like, oh. So one of my good friends was that guy. And so coach is just ripping into us. He's just like, we're down by 25 points. I don't care how big they are. You got to play harder. God, big, dag, nabbit, all. You know, he's going crazy. And this idiot, we're all just looking at the floor because we know you don't say anything. And finally this moron goes, Coach, they're good. And my coach lost it. He whips around, he grabs one of the trash cans, like the big, those big, he grabs it, spins and chunks it down the aisle, slams against, trash goes everywhere. So I'm sitting on my bench like this because I don't want to move, I don't want to make a sound, I don't want to do anything. So I'm on the bench and I'm just sitting here just like this. And my coach, they're good. And I'm sitting there like this. Coach throws it, and I still don't move. Trash is just raining down on top of me. Like, you know the little slivers they put the hot dog things in? Like one's just sitting on the back of my head. And I got lollipop wrappers, I got mustards all over the floor, and I don't move. I just sit here. Trash is on me. I'm not getting it. I'm not touching it. I'm just sitting there. And so finally coach leaves, and everybody just looks at him like, what are you doing? Why? He goes, hey guys, it's true. And I'm like, yeah, it's true, but you don't say it. Coach is gonna kill us. You gotta have the smarts to just shut up when it's time to shut up. Now, how many of you have had a teacher or a coach that was the most graceful, gracious, kind teacher or coach ever? Like, you mess up and they're just like, that's okay, honey, baby, it's all right. You just keep going, you just do your best, you just try your best. You ever had that thing? Like, you just, where the coach would just scream and yell at you, right? Like, you idiot, you got to cotton pick and do that right. They're like, listen, you just got to do your best. You do your best, and that's all you can do. Everybody just got to get it. Now, here's the thing, guys. Listen to me. Here's the thing about the wrathful coach and the graceful person. I have found very few people in my life who know like when it's time to lay down on the wrath and when it's time to lay down on the grace. They're either like always graceful so that people take advantage of them, or they're so wrathful that everybody just ignores them. Like coach is yelling and screaming and we're just blocking him out. Like he's up there ranting and raving, his face looks like a tomato, and we're just blocking him out, we're not paying any attention to it. The Bible describes God as manifesting his wrath and showing grace. Let me read you two passages. Listen to this. First, this is Zephaniah chapter 1, verses 14 and 15. I'm ringing up here a little bit. Can you turn me down just a tad? The great day of the Lord is near. Near and coming quickly. I'm still reading. Can you turn me down some more? Are the monitors on? Check. They're off? Check. All right, here's Zephaniah 1, 14 to 15. The great day of the Lord is near and coming quickly. The sound of the day of the Lord is bitter. The mighty man cries aloud there. A day of wrath is that day, a day of distress and anguish, a day of ruin and devastation, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and thick darkness. Now look at me. The Bible tells us that God manifests, pours out, and shows his wrath. But the Bible also talks about God being a God of grace and mercy. Listen to Psalm 145, 8 and 9. The Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. The Lord is good to all, and his mercy is over all that he has made. Now, I read those two verses and I think this. How can they be talking about the same God? How can, in one verse, we read that God is going to pour out his wrath, that day is going to be dark, and it's going to be cloudy, and it's going to be gloomy, and it's going to be bitter, so you better watch out. And then we go to another verse that says, God is slow to anger, God is full of steadfast love and mercy over everything that he has created, he is good to all. I read those and I think, can that be the same God? And the answer is yes. In our story of Noah, we see the wrath of God and we see the grace of God. And what I'm going to do tonight is we're going to look at all of chapter 7, the whole chapter, all right? And I want us to see the wrath of God and the grace of God. Genesis chapter 7. I'm going to read the whole thing. Then the Lord said to Noah, guys, I need you to listen. I don't want to waste my time tonight. Then the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before this man in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals, male and female, and his mate, and pair the animals that are not clean, the male and his mate, and 7 pairs of the birds of the heavens, also male and female, to keep their offspring alive in the face of all the earth. For in 7 days I will send rain on the earth, 40 days and 40 nights, and every living thing that I have made I will blot out from the face of the ground. And Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters came upon the earth, and Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him went into the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Of clean animals and of animals that are not clean, and of birds and of everything that creeps on the ground, two, male and female, went into the ark with Noah, as God had commanded Noah. And after 7 days, the waters of the flood came upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, in the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened, and rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On the very same day, Noah and his sons, Shem and Ham and Japheth, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons went and entered into the ark. They and every beast according to its kind, and all the livestock according to their kind, and every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, every winged creature. They went into the ark with Noah, 2 and 2 of all the flesh in which they had was breath of life, and those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. The flood continued 40 days on the earth. The waters increased and bore up the ark and rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters, and the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven was covered. The waters prevailed on the earth, birds, livestock, beasts, all swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all of mankind. Everything on dry land in whose nostrils had breath of life died. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those who were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days. Verse 4 says, "For in 7 days I will send rain on the earth, 40 days, 40 nights. Every living thing that I have made will be blotted out." That is called the wrath of God. Here's what we need to ask the question. We need to ask this question. Why does God pour out wrath? Now, my coach poured out wrath because he lost it emotionally. We had a moron teammate who didn't know when to shut up, and he said the wrong thing at the wrong time, and my coach erupted emotionally because he could not control himself. Now, here's what I need you to know. That is not how God pours out wrath. God is not this God that is flying off the handle because he just cannot control himself. You sin, I've got to get you. You're gonna get it. You're gonna get it. That's not God. Now, people try to portray God that way, as if God is like Zeus, mythological God. He's got a lightning bolt in his hand, and he's just sitting up there, and he's just waiting for you to do something stupid because God can't wait to just get you. When you do something stupid, he's going to have this emotional outburst and throw his lightning bolt at you, and you're dead. That is not the one true living God and how he deals with his wrath. He does not lash out of control. Now catch this. Look at me. Catch this. God pours out his wrath because he is holy. Did you know what word in the Bible describes God more than any other word in all of the Bible? The word holy. Isn't that what the angels say? Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Holiness is the word that describes God. Now, what does that mean to be holy? It means that God is perfect in all of his being. He is totally set apart from us. God is other than us. He is different from us. And he is righteous and holy and just. Now catch this. Catch this. God has to deal with sin because he is holy. So God's not flying off the handle. And that's why people get his wrath. It is because we are sinners and we've rebelled against God's law. We've rebelled against his authority. We've rebelled against his character. And because we've rebelled against him in that way, because God is holy, he therefore pours out his wrath to deal with our wickedness. Let me ask you a question. Why did God pour out his wrath on the earth in the day of Noah? Did we not read in chapter 6, verse 11, now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and the earth was filled with violence? Did we not read in verse 5 of chapter 6 that every intention of the thought of his heart was only evil continually? Do you know why God poured out his wrath in the day of Noah? Because he had to deal with sin. Look at me. He had to deal with sin. God could not rightly be called a holy God if he overlooked sin. If he just pretended like sin didn't exist, he just pretended like we weren't that bad, he just pretended as if what was going on was just something that, it's not horrible, it's not terrible, and so he just overlooks it, then God could not be called a just, good, and holy God. God cannot let it stand. I'm going to make this statement before we go to the next point. Listen. When God pours out his wrath, it is always a right and necessary action to the objective moral evil in people's lives. When God pours out his wrath, it is always right and necessary to do so. Now, make no mistake about it. God's wrath is severe. Listen, it is severe. I mean, just look at a few of these verses. Verses 11 and 12. The flood came upon the earth. It says the deep burst forth. Rain fell on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. The windows of heaven were opened. Water prevailed over all the earth, and every living thing that was on the ground and breathed air was destroyed and wiped out. Everything. Severe? The clip that I showed at the very beginning, if you watch very carefully, it has people running to the ark once the flood starts. And as they're running to the ark, the earth bursts forth, and you see these huge geysers shoot up out of the ground, and it's launching people up in the air. That is more like what it was like than what you see in like little kid movies, you know, where it just starts raining. People are like, oh, it's raining on us. I wonder how long this is going to happen. You know, this is going on for like 20 days. Maybe it'll start getting worse. Like, this was a catastrophic event that killed people. Violently killed people. God's wrath is severe. Everyone died. Everyone. Now, this shouldn't surprise us, though. If you know the Bible, this shouldn't surprise us. What is the wages of sin? Death. The wages of sin means, what do you deserve because of your sin? Death. Every person in this room and every person who has ever lived, we deserve death because of our sin against God. God is holy and righteous and just, and we have rebelled against him. We've lived the way we wanted to live. We've violated his law. We've gone against his authority. We've done everything we've wanted to do, and the Bible said the wages of that is death. So, when God pours out his wrath, listen to me, when God pours out his wrath, we should expect severity. God doesn't pour out his wrath and it not be severe. God pours out his wrath and it is always severe. Last point. It's got a lot to it. The wrath of God magnifies the greatness of his grace. The wrath of God magnifies the greatness of his grace. I need you to listen very carefully. This is the most important point tonight. Because we all deserve the wrath of God, you know that's what you deserve. You deserve the wrath of God. You deserve death for your sin. Because we all deserve it, when God chooses to be merciful and he gives us his grace, it is magnified even more against the backdrop of his wrath. In other words, if you deserve death, and instead of getting death, God preserves you and is merciful to you and graces you, because you know what you deserve, it makes the grace even more beautiful. Right? If you know what you deserve and then you know you don't get what you deserve, it makes the grace of not getting it look even more beautiful. From beginning to end, everything that occurs in Noah's life is God's grace. From the very beginning to the very end. Look at verse 1. What does it say? And the Lord said, go get in the ark. Now, whose idea was it to build the ark? Was it Noah's? Did Noah go, you know, honey, like he just walks up to his wife and he's like, you know, I got this weird idea. I'm going to build a big water vessel right here in the middle of the land. No, it wasn't his idea. God came to him and told him to do this. Again, graciousness? Yes. Remember when it says that Noah was a righteous man in his generation? Why? Because Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Because Noah found grace, he was righteous. Verse 16 says, who shut the door? Who shut him in? The ark. Who shut him in? God did. Noah, his 3 sons, this was too big of a door for them just to pull up on their own. This was a massive door that all these animals had to get inside, large animals had to get inside, and there's no way that him and his sons could shut that door, and so God shuts them up himself. Verse 23, the ultimate grace of God toward Noah, spared his life. Look at the end of verse 23. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left and those who were with him in the ark. Let me say that again. Everyone died except Noah and his family. What did Noah and his family deserve in and of themselves? Death. Let me repeat that. What did Noah and his family deserve in and of themselves? Death. They deserve to die like everybody else, but they found grace in the eyes of the Lord. God graced them, and by gracing them, he spared their lives. Now, the last element I want to focus on. No, we'll save it for next week. See the 4 points that you have there? We'll save those for next week. That'll be the whole sermon next week. We'll expand it. We'll have more time to discuss it. Here's what I just want to say. The ark represents Jesus Christ. The ark is a picture of Jesus. Now here's how I want to end tonight. Listen to me. Here's how I want to end. I want everybody to put everything out of your hands, and I want you looking at me. I want your undivided attention for 5 minutes. God is holy. You are not. You are not holy. In and of yourselves, you are a sinner that deserves death. The Bible calls it eternal death. Separation from God, being removed out of the presence of God. The Bible says in a place called hell. So it's worse than just physical death. And that's bad enough. But it's not just physical death, it's spiritual death. Eternal spiritual death. That is what every one of us in this room deserves. Like, but you're a pastor who deserves hell. In and of myself, I deserve hell. I'm not up here today saying, you guys are really bad, you need to be like me. No, I'm saying we're all bad. All of us are bad. I mean, can we just start naming the sins we've committed in our lives? How long would that take? Because we're all bad. Every one of us. And God is holy. And God is righteous. And God is just. And what God does in response to sin is he has to deal with it. He has to deal with it. He cannot let sin just stand. He has to deal with it. There is not one sin, listen to me. There is not one sin that any human being has done that will not get the wrath of God. Now you may say, Neil, that's some bad news. You're right. That is some bad news. And I am so thankful that the story doesn't end with the bad news. You see, the gospel literally means the good news. You see, there's good news to the bad news. The bad news is we all deserve hell. Here's the good news. God, knowing that he has to deal with sin, knowing that he has to pour out his wrath, also is a God of graciousness and mercy. And so he sends Jesus. God takes on human flesh. It's what we celebrate at Christmas time. God becomes a baby. He takes on human flesh. He lives and walks upon the earth, living a sinless life, and he goes to the cross. And you know what the Bible says happens on the cross? Listen to this. The wrath of God that sinners deserve. Let's just take me, for instance. The wrath that I deserve. God looks at Neil Salmon and he says, here's the list of sins that Neil Salmon has done in his life that has violated my character, my law, and my authority. Neil Salem has willingly committed all these sins against me. And Neil Salem deserves my wrath. He deserves death. And God says that I'm going to grace him. Neil Salem has found grace in the eyes of the Lord. And Jesus went to the cross. You know what happens on the cross? God the Father, who has to deal with sin, right? He has to deal with it. God cannot let sin stand. Instead of pouring that wrath out on me, pours it out on Jesus on the cross. So Jesus is hanging there on that cross, and the wrath of God that has been stored up for Neil Sandlin gets poured out on Jesus. Guess how much wrath is left for Neil Sandlin? 0. I want you just to stop. Christian, listen. I want you to stop and just think about that. All the wrath that you deserve. Picture a cup, a bowl filled with God's wrath because of every sin that you've committed in your life and that you will commit in your life. It is being stored up and it is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and that cup is getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And one day, if God does not intervene in grace, that cup is going to be poured out on you, and you're going to die spiritually and physically forever. And instead, what God did is God sent his son, wrapped him in flesh, went to the cross, and he took that huge bucket that you deserve, and he poured it out on Jesus. All of it. There's none left in the bowl, none left in the cup for you. Your sin got God's wrath. God dealt with your sin. God didn't just overlook it. He didn't go, hey, Neil, I love you, so I'm just going to overlook your sin. No, he's going to say, I still got to pour out my wrath on sin. I still have to. I'll pour it out on myself instead. Christian, you're Noah. You're Noah. You were brought in and graced and saved from the wrath. Now, not everybody in this room is a Christian. Anytime we have this many people in a room, I know there's people in this room who aren't Christians. They've never come to Jesus and said, Jesus, here's my life. Forgive me of my sin. I accept your salvation. I accept your forgiveness. I want to follow you. I know that some of you have not done that. I need you to listen to me very carefully. This is not a joke. This is not a game. I cannot say anything more serious than this. Right now, you are under the wrath of God. And if you die in your sin without coming to Jesus, you will experience the wrath of God for all of eternity after you die. See, you're just trying to scare people. No, I'm not trying to scare you. I just want you to understand the reality that you are standing in as a sinner that is not saved by Jesus. You are the person outside of the boat. And you're saying, I don't think the flood's coming. I don't think the flood's coming. I don't think the flood's coming. And then the flood comes. And when the flood comes, it's too late. Here is the wonderful thing. If you're breathing right now, God is being gracious to you. He's being merciful to you. And he has, listen, it is not by accident that you're here tonight. It's not by accident. You're here for a reason and a purpose. Because God wanted you to hear this message tonight. You can either be in Jesus or you can be outside in the flood. Those are the only two options for us. You're either going to be in Christ, be forgiven, be righteous, or you're going to be outside in the flood. Those are the only two places you can be. And you say, well, how do you get from the outside to the inside? You come to Jesus. You come to Jesus. He's the way. You come to Christ. He is the way. If you reject him, it is if you are saying, I know the flood is coming, I know the ark is right there, but instead of going into the ark, I'll just stay right here where I am. You don't have to believe it tonight. Listen to me. You can leave here. You can say, I don't believe that. Or you can say, yeah, I believe it, but I got plenty of time. The Bible says today is the day of salvation. Don't put off tomorrow what you should do today. So here's what I'm going to ask. Listen. In just a minute, I'm going to pray to close and we're done. If you have never come to Jesus Christ for your salvation, if that has never happened, today can be the day you get saved. Saved from what? Saved from your sin. Saved from God's wrath. Saved from death and hell. You can get that today if you're willing to come to Jesus and follow him and serve him and let him be the Lord of your life. So in just a minute I'm going to pray. When we're done praying, I'm going to stand right here and I'm going to stay here. And when I stay here and I stand here, if you want Christ and you know you're not a Christian, you know you've never come to Jesus, and you want to follow Jesus with your life, come up here and grab me and say, I want to talk about what you've been talking about. I don't want to leave here not knowing Jesus. Jesus said, anybody that comes to me, I will not cast them away. I will not cast them out. Anyone who's willing, come. Come and receive. Come and believe, and you'll be saved. You'll get eternal life if you come. It's very simple, isn't it? Just come.